The first ever time that I watched The Boys about 9-ish months ago, I thought it was high-key kinda overrated, relying a bit too much on the shock factor. But that's because I literally was not paying attention. I was quite literally doing homework as it played in the background of my dorm. If you asked me to explain the plot of the show at the time, I would have just said penis and French guy, that's it. So I decided that leading up to season 3, I'll actually binge the show, and boy oh boy did I binge it, thinking I really binged it. Because there were 16 episodes and each one is about an hour, so that's roughly 16 hours of content in less than 4 days. I was on something else in the moment, and that thing was The Boys. I low-key got the hype finally. Season 1 is probably an 8 out of 10 and that ending kept me hooked. Season 2 was a bit of a downgrade admittedly, even though it still did stick the landing. It was roughly a 6.5 to 7 out of 10. A lot did feel unnecessary and like the show kind of went through some motions, but for the most part the ground that was laid was sturdy enough for the show to keep me hooked for season 3, and boy am I happy that I was hooked, because season 3 is easily the best season of The Boys so far. I definitely do have my issues with it, and some major ones at that, but it was dang near perfect as a season of a superhero television show, and it was outright enthralling as a season of television in general. The Boys and Barry are the two shows this year that for me kept me on my toes the most. From a not even minute to minute, second to second basis, I was genuinely on the edge of my seat because I had no idea where the show was going. But every time the show went somewhere, it was what I least expected, but simultaneously what made the most sense. I'm gonna try to keep this spoiler free for the most part, so don't worry if you haven't watched the show yet. Continuing from a writing perspective, the story of this season was such an upgrade from last season. In movies and shows, at least for me, I can usually sense when a writing choice is inspired when it comes from a place of wanting to expand the world and the story to its maximum potential, and Mindstorm's character just wasn't fully that last season. However, Soldier Boy in this season is hands down the perfect way for the story of The Boys to go. The characterizations of Soldier Boy, his choices, his relationships with certain characters, everything just came together so well and worked so well in tandem, and I loved it. To be real, after this, I don't know who could possibly match him as not a big bad, but as that antithesis to the main characters that we get each season. When it comes to the arcs of, well, the main characters and the main guys, the boys, the 7, and the few recurring surrounding characters, I found the writing to be spot on. There weren't any cheat codes, nothing was forgotten. All of these characters have a natural progression of character. There's a moment in the 7th episode between Butcher and Huey that I think a lot of people probably hated, but that was the point. It was a moment of absolutely this is who these characters are, and the writing team is absolutely progressing them, but they're not taking any shortcuts. They're doing their due diligence and always keeping characters grounded in reality while progressing them in the ways that they need to be progressed. Homelander might just be the best live action character on television right now. There is not a single second where Anthony Starr isn't killing it, literally and metaphorically. The absolute tension that the appearance of the character brings to a scene is a testament to Starr's performance and the writing of the character. Butcher continues doing Butcher things, and I think his flashback episode is heartbreakingly masterful in the way it's written, the way it's acted, and especially the aftermath and how Butcher continues to act in the following episode. Soldier Boy, I already talked about how much I love that character and his role in the story. Jensen Ackles killed it too. Also, if I had that man's voice, Huey and Starlight's arc is probably the worst and most infuriating of the season, but still it is never unbearable. Huey was the main character at one point, and I understand that they can't just drastically let go of that. I never really minded Deep as a character aside from, well, like his actual character, but for the most part he's solid comic relief with an arc of his own that never takes up more than it has to. I think he has his own perfectly carved role in this story. Frenchie and Kimiko are magnificent. In my opinion, their dynamic outweighs Huey and Starlight. A-Train has an above average storyline which can be just overdone at times. I really like Mother Milk's arc and still think he's a top 2 or 3 character in the show. And Maeve and Ashley have some solid moments. I love that Maeve's arc is finally closed because having any more of her would have ruined her character. She plays her role perfectly and there isn't much about it that I hate. And finally, I like that Black Noir had a much bigger role in this season. We got a lot more characterization for him, or we actually got characterization for him, and his ending is low-key heartbreaking. Now, going by the basis of the release schedule this season, the first 3 episodes were exactly what I needed following my binge. I don't know how well they work for anyone who hadn't seen the show in a year plus, but for me it was a perfect continuation and a grade A hook for the rest of the season. And also, releasing all 3 of these episodes together was a magnificent choice on the showrunner's parts because the endings of the first 2 episodes are really good, but still they're not the absolute tragic hooks that is the ending to the 3rd episode. In my opinion, episodes 4 to 7 were a perfect, and I repeat that that again. Perfect second act. From a week-to-week basis, I was eager to return, enthralled, and never let down. And episode 8, I'll talk about it in a bit. Before that though, I want to highlight some of my other more minor flaws with the show. Number 1, the action aside from the end of Herogasm did fall flat for me most of the time. I don't think it's edited very well, but that's something I've gotten over. As 1, it's not the main point of the show. Actually, it's probably like the 7th or 8th main point of the show, and 2, it's always been that way, so it is what it is. Number 2, well, actually that's it. If you guys think there are any other flaws, you might as well just go and point it down in the comments, because I personally don't have many other flaws with this, at least many other minor flaws. And now on the season finale, I found it underwhelming, given the fact that I thought the show was darn near perfect as a story up until that point. To me, parts of the finale, while still good, felt forced and out of line with the rest of the season, such as what happened between Maeve and Soldier Boy. Spoiler real quick, the fact that Maeve kept up so well with Homelander, and holy shite, I hate that little kid. Negro, what is you doing? The writers left him out for that entire perfect second act run of episodes, and then bring him back just cause. It's justified, don't get me wrong. I understand why they brought him back, and it kind of works well within the story, but oh my goodness, I do hate that kid. Everything in the finale makes sense and is justified, but it just wasn't as good as the rest of the season, at least the second half of the finale. The first half is probably still up there with the rest of the season, but the ending just didn't fully land for me. This season was still great, but boy was I left with some mixed emotions at the end. And on that, I want to talk about the future of the boys, as I thought this season would have been a great time to end the show. The way that everything was going, I thought this arc, even if it went on for a few more episodes, would have been an amazing way to end the boys. Of course, I knew this absolutely wasn't the case, and that's where some of my worry for season 4 and on comes in, as I don't want the boys, while it is really good, to overstay its welcome and overextend the lifetime of the show, as so many really popular shows have done. At most, I think that another season will be perfect for the boys to end on and wrap up the story, and given what happened to Butcher this season, that might be the case, but more likely than not, this show will go on for another 3 or 4 seasons, and I have my doubts about the quality going forward. Even though the season was a solid 8.5 out of 10, the ending didn't give me the most faith going forwards. We'll definitely be watching season 4 though.